Today we're going to jump into the top 5 tips I have for anybody looking to be a first-time buyer and what you should do before you buy your first home. So with that, let's jump in. Now, as always, welcome to the Home Loan Channel. I'm Jake from Home Loans, and this is what I do with mortgage. So today what we're going to be diving into is looking into the top 5 reasons or the top 5 tips really that I wish I would have known. Now that I'm in the mortgage industry, I see the way things work and I can see how the numbers and things correspond. These are 5 tips that I wish someone would have sat me down and talked to me about who was a professional in the business. These aren't your tips from your local best friend or family member who thinks they know everything about real estate. These are top 5 tips from a lender that's currently in every day in the market, seeing people's numbers, doing pre-approvals, and getting people started on buying specifically their first home. So, top 5 tips. Let's get it started. Number 1, you don't know everything. So stop thinking you do. Now, what I mean by this is when it comes to buying a home, everybody has an opinion. Now, they all just think that these loan officers, realtors, people in the business are trying to get a sale out of you, trying to get you to buy a home. Now, to be honest, there's a lot of people in this industry that are not good people, that are just doing that. They're in it for the money. They're not here to help you out. But there's also a lot of lenders and realtors that you can actually trust to give honest feedback, honest opinion. And just because it's honest and it differs from what you think doesn't mean it's just to get a sale out of you. A lot of times we give our true honest take based off what we see the market doing, based off everything else we're seeing. So number 1 is you don't know everything. Just because you do a little bit of research on your own time doesn't mean you understand how not only the market works, but also the loan programs work. You're gonna have to realize that a professional who studies this stuff every day is gonna be a better option for you. Now, I bring this up because I wish I would have sat down and talked to a loan officer before I became one, because it would have put me in a very different spot when buying a home. Now, with that being said, it's great to have an opinion of what you want. But keep in mind, you're coming to this situation, no matter how much you've researched it, from a lack of knowledge. And a lot of times with a lack of knowledge comes a strong opinion, because you don't like to be told you're wrong. Now, the reason I say this is because you can literally read articles and study up on things every day, but unless you're in the trenches seeing the numbers, getting offers accepted or rejected, you actually don't know the market. You can read all about the market, you can see everything that it's doing, but understanding it from a professional's perspective, who's literally the one dealing with these offers being accepted or rejected, getting pre-approvals done, making sure people are actually qualified every single day, watching the rate market, watching if it's going up or down, knowing the reasons why it's going up and down. So I'm not telling you to listen to everything that someone else is saying, but I am telling you to have a conversation with someone who's a professional in the business, because I guarantee you're going to learn something. So when I do tell my friends and family that I'm here to help, I mean it. I'm here to help you decide if right now is a good time for you. And I can't help you do that until I see your numbers and know your situation. That is the reason I try to get an application done. It's not to sell you a house. It's not to push you into anything. It's because I can't give you real financial or housing advice until I know exactly what you're working with, because everything in the housing market is specific to your situation. All right, which brings me to tip number 2. You don't have to be in the perfect spot of your life to buy a home, because you never are gonna feel like you're ready. It's always gonna feel a little unachievable. You're always gonna question it, and you're always gonna feel like it's too big of a purchase. Now, I'm not saying just to jump into it blindly. You need to have a plan in place. You need to understand what it takes and what it's going to look like. But that doesn't mean you have to be in the perfect spot. It just means you have to know what the possibilities are and what the risks as well as benefit are of buying. Now, in this case, that's why it's also, back to tip number 1, so important to have someone that's actually a professional in the market to trust through it. Now, again, you never want to walk into something that's not going to be good for you, but if you have people alongside you guiding you that actually can help you through the process, you're going to be in a good spot. I almost guarantee it. Now, you should really build a team around you. Besides that mortgage professional, you should absolutely have friends and family that you trust about this decision that can help pour into you. But don't let them make the decision for you. You have to make your own decision based off the numbers you're seeing, based off the situation that's going on, based off with when you're looking at houses, if you feel like the houses are actually realistic for you to live in. You have to make that decision on your own. So tip number 2 is have a plan in place, but just because you don't feel like you're ready doesn't mean you're not ready. Now, tip number 3 is start budgeting. This one should be pretty straightforward, but I almost guarantee you whatever your mortgage is going to be, it's probably going to be more than your rent. People were going around a couple years ago saying, oh, it's cheaper to buy than rent, which technically, long term, it's a lot cheaper to buy than rent because you may be putting money into the house. It's going to be a higher monthly payment, but you're not just paying someone else's mortgage. You actually are building equity. But point of all this is you need to have a budget in mind. So part of what we do as loan officers is we'll sit down and crunch numbers with you. We look at what your income is versus what you can technically afford. Now, just because you can afford it on paper doesn't mean you can actually afford it in your budget. This is where budgeting comes into play. Not only should you budget to save money, to make sure you have a surplus each month that you can add into a savings account, build your down payment, and have an emergency fund, you should also budget because once you see the numbers after talking with the loan officer, you know what your monthly payment could possibly be. And there's a good chance it's going to be a couple hundred, if not $1,000 more than what you're currently paying for your rent. Now, you need to make sure you can pay this so you're not going to default on your mortgage or end up in a bad spot. You don't want to be house poor. So really having a plan in place to budget and being able to understand how much it's going to cost monthly instead of deciding, hey, I've decided that I'm ready to buy a home. I'm going to go get pre-approved. And then the numbers hit you and you say, I don't know if I can afford that. Meet with a loan officer early. The earlier you can meet with a loan officer, the better you can plan for what your mortgage is actually going to be and what you're actually going to be paying monthly. In that case, you can actually reset your budget based off what you think your mortgage will be in a year or 2 years and see if you can stick to it in that amount of time. Tip number 4, pay off your debt. Now, I'm going to say this very carefully, but once you establish a basic savings account, and when I say basic, I mean $5,000 to $10,000, enough to get you through emergencies. You should focus on paying off some debt. Not all your debt, but what you want to focus on is the highest monthly payment for the lowest overall amount. This is what's going to open up your debt to income ratio to be able to pay more for a mortgage and qualify for more. So focus on high monthly payment with low overall amount. Those are the debts you want to pay off first. Tip number 5, and the final tip we're going to wrap up with today, is your first home doesn't have to be perfect. Now, I say this from a place where if you get into a home to build equity, it may not be exactly what you want. But the average homeowner spends less than 5 years in their first home. So ask yourself the question of, did you plan on spending 5 years in your last rental? Or do you plan on being in the area for 5 more years? If that's a yes, then there's a good chance that you're going to sell your home before you move to your next one. So you don't need something that's perfect. You need something that can build you equity. Once you build equity, you can sell that and use that equity to purchase a different home. You know, in that time, you can build a savings. You're not looking for something at the top end of your budget that you don't love. You want something that's going to get you in the door. And that's what a lot of housing is. And people that realize that younger and people that realize that earlier are going to have an easier time, because when you realize that housing in 83 years has only depreciated 4 times, that is what is building you equity. Right now, home ownership and owning a home is actually getting you more money than a savings account or inflation. Right now, the only true counter to the inflation rates at what they are is home equity. Appreciation of home is going up an average of 6 to 8%. Right now, inflation's at 6%. Now, so your money sitting in the bank saving is actually losing money because of inflation. Whereas if it's in housing, if you're building equity on that, you're actually gaining money. You're actually matching inflation at this point in time right now in March of 2023. And hopefully as appreciation goes up even more and inflation comes down, you're now actually making money just by having equity in your house. So when I say you don't need to have the perfect house to move into, you truly don't. You need something that you can live in that is comfortable for your situation at the time, not something you're going to spend your life in. So those are my top 5 tips on what I wish I would have known before I became a loan officer about the housing market and about how to be pre-approved as a first-time buyer. As always, thank you for watching. I'm Jake from Home Loans. If you don't, please go follow me on social media, my Instagram, hit subscribe and like. I would appreciate that so much. I want these videos to reach as many first-time home buyers as possible to help people get into their first home. And last but not least, if you have any questions, please hit me up on social media. You can find me on Instagram. Comment below. I will always respond to your comments. And let's talk. Let's have a good time. And if you're in California, let's talk about how to get you into a home sooner rather than later. Or, as I said today, at least get a plan going so that you know what's going to be expected when you are ready. Now, with that being said, have an awesome day. See you soon.